this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels, Darth Maul returns and brings along his very own brand of creepy crypticness as he slowly tries to make Ezra his very own personal apprentice, as well as finding out the secret location of Obi-Wan I Have the High Ground Kenobi. While I did like this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels, I would like to kick both Ezra and Kanan squarely in their Jedi balls, because they are so stupid for falling for Darth Maul's trap. I mean, have they not been through enough situations with this guy where they realize, don't work with him, he will screw us over? That's what he's continuing to do on his never-ending quest to find Obi-Wan Kenobi and presumably stick a lightsaber right down his throat. With that in mind, this was a very fun and creepy episode of Star Wars Rebels. Creepy because there are ghosts involved. That's right, we actually get to see the return of the very disturbing Night Sisters in this episode. You see, Darth Maul has decided to go back to his home planet of Dathomir, where he lives in this Night Sister fortress, and he needs to bring some human sacrifices so that he can start to learn a little bit more about the secrets about the location of Obi-Wan Kenobi. The thing is, he can't do it alone. He needs to have Ezra's help, because he has something that he needs, and vice versa. So he decides to basically put them between a rock and a hard place, and he tells both Kanan and Ezra that, look, if Ezra doesn't come with me to help get me these secrets, I'm gonna tell the Empire the secret of your hidden rebel base. Reluctantly, Ezra has to go along, and that's when we're finally treated to what is probably the most nostalgic part of the episode, which is getting to see Darth Maul's home, which is not only dark and gothic, which is perfect for his overall sensibilities, but I love all of the callbacks to Clone Wars, like the fact that he has this giant, massive painting of Satine, who is the pacifistic leader of the new Mandalorians. It's also very disturbing in the fact that he is basically responsible for her death, and he's looking for Obi-Wan as well. And right below that is the classic darksaber, which is one of the coolest looking lightsabers from the series. It returns in this episode not only to be used by Ezra and a couple of other characters, but it's also taken back by Sabine at the end of the episode. Everything came full circle on that one. Ezra and Darth Maul go through this dark ritual where their eyes start to glow green and they're able to see into each other's minds, and that's where we go back to the whole planet with the twin suns. Of course, this is all because this is taking place on Tatooine. This is going to hold the secrets to the location of Obi-Wan Kenobi, as well as the secrets to destroying the Sith. And what I can assume from this is that they're actually talking about Luke Skywalker, who's going to be inadvertently responsible for bringing balance back to the Force, which leads me to think we might even see a cameo from Luke in this series. We have to remember, though, that this takes place before A New Hope, so if we do see Luke Skywalker, it's going to be a version of him which is not familiar with the Force or even that close to Obi-Wan Kenobi, but we might actually get that Obi-Wan Darth Maul rematch that we have been waiting for, all on the planet of Tatooine, which honestly I think would be really awesome. And that's pretty much the whole point of this episode, is that it's setting up the tension. Who's going to get to Tatooine first? Who will discover Obi-Wan? Will Darth Maul find him and try to kill him first, although we know that's definitely not going to happen? Or will the Ghost Crew get there, gaining a brand new ally, and maybe even pushing Obi-Wan to be the one to teach Luke the ways of the Force? So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels? My favorite thing about this episode was definitely the imagery, especially the scene when after Ezra and Maul are done, suddenly this giant tomb opens and all of these green ghostly figures start to emerge, and it's actually the spirits of the Night Sisters, and they actually have the ability to basically possess people, so they go into the bodies of Kanan and Sabine, which means, of course, we're going to have a very reluctant duel. We're going to have Kanan going up against Ezra, we're going to have Sabine blasting them from multiple angles. Hell, it even gives them super-powered zombie spider abilities, with Sabine actually being able to, crawl around on the walls and stuff, kind of like she's freaking Gollum from Lord of the Rings. It's a little silly, but honestly, I like the fact that they were able to bring the Night Sisters back, especially in a capacity that really plays up their whole styling, which is being really freaking super creepy. And I'm actually really surprised that Maul just allowed everyone to go. I mean, he could have pretty much just killed them all right here, but he actually decides to leave them. One, he probably doesn't want to go back in that creepy-ass cave, and two, he doesn't necessarily want to kill Ezra. He's still pretty determined to make him his apprentice. He's a very interesting character, especially considering that he doesn't ally himself with the Sith anymore, but he still relies on the power of the dark side. And ultimately, this is probably all just to get revenge against Obi-Wan. They're still not talking about their motives out loud that much. Aside from that, all the Night Sister stuff at the end of the episode, I loved everything at the beginning, with Ezra getting these really creepy visions of Darth Maul, who's just sort of casually walking around Chopper Base, just sort of getting into his head and freaking him out a little. And what's the deal with Bendu just suddenly disappearing like a freaking ninja? There's a scene where Kanan and Ezra go to get some advice from him, and they say that if you want to see Darth Maul, just turn around. And Darth Maul's right there, and then suddenly Bendu is gone. I'm just gonna chalk it up to the power of the Force, because there's no way that a being of his size could have simply just disappeared that fast. Bendu is an interesting character again, like very much like Darth Maul. He's kind of like in the middle, you know. I mean, that's kind of like his whole like role. He's not dark side, he's not light side. And I was sort of hoping there'd be a confrontation between these two characters. I'd love to have seen them both discuss their philosophy on the power of the Force and how it's being used, because you have three very different types of Force users in that group right there. So I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity. With that in mind, this was still a really solid episode of Star Wars Rebels. It's hard not to get excited about an episode that involves Darth Maul, as he's arguably one of the most interesting characters from the series, and bringing him back even after Clone Wars I think was a really smart decision. I'm still holding out hope that we might get some more connections to Rogue One, and considering that we're only about a week away from the release of that movie, we might not get it, but eagle-eyed viewers who've been checking out some of the trailers for the brand new Rogue One might have noticed that if these characters don't appear physically in the movie, at least their ship is going to. There's a great brand new trailer where you actually get to see all of these rebel ships getting ready to go into battle against a Star Destroyer, and hanging out right at the bottom is the Ghost ship. It is distinctly the same exact ship, so even if we have that, I'm pretty damn satisfied, and it lets us know that at least a good portion of that crew is still going to be active during that period in Rogue One. It's a nice little nod to the series, which honestly I still think is pretty decent, but so far Season 3 has just been kinda so-so, and ultimately I thought this one was going to be a little crazier, especially with the reintroduction of the Darksaber, but ultimately it was just a setup for this big trip to Tatooine, which hopefully will involve Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Maul. We're just gonna have to wait and see. This was still a pretty good episode, so check it out, Star Wars Rebels fans. I'm gonna give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. If any of you guys did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below, and what you hope to see from Star Wars Rebels. Thank you again for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I will see you next time. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.